Hello, my friends. Hello, it's Matthew Street, and welcome so much to my channel. I really appreciate it. And folks, this is my second video in my reaction, review, emotional expression, whatever you want to call it, my thoughts on episode 2 of The Beatles Get Back, the Peter Jackson directed brand new film on Disney+. And folks, as I come into episode 2 here, I feel such a warmth after finishing this episode. It feels like a homecoming with old friends. Regular guys, 4 regular guys, and like I said in the first video, I did call them regular guys. They look and sound and respond to one another like regular people, regular folks, but these are people with extraordinary talents as musicians and artists. They were gifted or given the gift of music, writing music, singing music, playing music, presenting it to the world, and we are all the better for it over the last close 60 years of the Beatles being in our consciousness. And so I want to continue with my little thought process on this episode, which has touched me so deeply, as I'm sure it has many of you. And as I said, episode 1 ended with a very, very emotional scene with George, after George leaving the band, and you get that emotional hug with John, Paul, and Ringo. It just, if that didn't bring a tear to your eye, you better check your pulse. Just what a great cliffhanger with George leaving and those 3 guys getting together emotionally like that. It just was so moving. They do a little jam with Yoko, which was, you get Paul, John, and Ringo, and it's kind of meh. Yeah, it's like, okay, they blowing off some steam. But I will say something as I come into episode 2 is more thoughts popped into my head. Forget everything you thought of this period in the Beatles' career, or everything you thought of after you saw Let It Be. Because, I'm sorry, nothing you've ever heard or read before tells the whole story. But I feel Get Back, while I'm not going to say it's the be-all, end-all of everything, I know there's a lot written out there, there's a lot has been said over the last 50-plus years, but in my mind, I think Get Back comes the closest to totally capturing this period in the Beatles' career. I really do. I really feel about this strongly, folks. And I haven't even watched episode 3 yet, but I'm sorry, after 2 episodes, this could be the definitive record of this period in their career. Absolutely. Now, Michael Lindsay Hogg, God bless him, great director. He did the best he could. I think, at the time in 1970 when they were putting Let It Be together 50 years ago, some of this stuff would never, ever be considered to be for general consumption. Some of the things they're talking about and doing when they were still an active band or thereafter the breakup when the film came out, Let It Be, they wouldn't consider half this material in a million years. It'd be too embarrassing for the Beatles at the time, or they didn't want people to know too much of their personal business. But with a half a century gone by, it's like opening a hidden treasure chest full of gold. The stuff that maybe seemed so mundane, left on the cutting room floor half a century ago, is now a treasure. It's like, this is better than anything that was in the Let It Be film. That's how valuable these outtakes are and these hidden conversations and whatnot. So it's gold. It's absolute gold. And as we come into day 8, as part 2 opens up, Ringo shows up early, and just a couple of my notes. Again, I'm going to go through quick little highlights and notes that hit me. That, Ringo says the meeting and George went fine. The meeting went fine, but everything kind of fell apart at the end. And as it alluded to in the series, the meeting did not go well. And they have this meeting sitting around, like you get Paul eventually comes, Ringo's there, Linda's there, people are all sitting around, Michael Lindsay Hogg and Glyn Johns and whatnot, several others. And this sit-around discussion at the beginning of part 2 is so intense, so revealing, and so emotional. Paul's saying, like, I I want to write songs about white walls to please John and Yoko. And Paul, I got to say, during this conversation at the beginning of part 2, he seems so understanding. He doesn't seem at all vindictive or vicious towards Yoko. He seems like, hey, they want to be together, and maybe I've got to come to accept. He seems so understanding. I got to give the guy credit. You've heard a lot of stuff about Paul during this period and how Yoko was treated, but I got to say, Paul really, really handles it well in this meeting. And that's when he makes the famous comment that's in the trail about, what are they going to say in 50 years? They broke up because Yoko sat on an amp, which is just what a telling, revealing line. And then at the end of this little meeting, it's so heartwarming when you see Paul get emotional. I mean, he really gets emotional when he goes, and then there were just two. Talking about what's going on with John, with Yoko. George has left the band, and you can see it in Ringo and Paul's face, this level of deep contemplation of what's happened to them. And I swear Paul has some mistiness in his eyes. He just looks so emotional. It's such a powerful moment about how this has affected him, especially, and I'm sure Ringo. And Linda makes a quick comment, and I like the way Paul jokes and says, hey, just stay out of this, Yoko. Calls Linda Yoko. I thought that was funny. Eventually, John arrives, and then we come to a really crucial, pivotal moment in episode 2 is when Paul and John meet in the cafeteria at Twickenham, and they have a intense conversation, audio only, and I thought Peter Jackson handled it very well with the visual. Very riveting about the band relationships, and although they didn't really accomplish too much in this conversation, I really think they cleared some of the air a little bit, and it was very riveting to hear this private conversation between John and Paul. So then John, Paul, and Ringo, they work on Get Back, which is very cool. It rocks, and Paul jokes about the Hofner set list from the 66 tour set list on the side of his Hofner. He jokes about it, and he shows it to John. This was for the old shows. That's such a cool little moment. Day 9 comes, and a couple of things. Again, these are things that jumped out at me. It starts out on day 9. Paul's taking time with this young assistant named Paul Clapper, and he's just sitting and playing the piano for this Paul Clapper and talking about music, demoing some songs for him like Martha, My Dear and whatnot. It's just a touching, nice moment to see Paul taking time for a young guy. You can tell he's a young fella. And just Paul taking that time to talk to him about music and encourage him. I thought that was a beautiful moment. Paul and Ringo do their little piano boogie, which you could see in Let It Be. Paul plays a little segment of Woman, which I thought was very cool. Then he does a little bit of Backseat of My Car. Oh, I wrote this one last night, I think he says. Backseat of My Car, which was on Ram. Unbelievable. In general, it's Paul. He's on the piano. He's basically doing it's little fragments and stuff, but I think it's very priceless. He's doing originals and some unreleased stuff, little segments, but it's a really, really special moment to see him doing that on the piano. And I think Ringo makes a comment like, oh, I could watch him play piano all day or for hours. Yeah, just beautiful for Ringo to say that. Then John arrives. John, Paul, and Ringo just kind of hanging out, talking, having some fun talk, letting off some steam. Peter Sellers shows up, and it's just riveting personal talk when John, Paul, and Ringo are just sitting around Twickenham right before they leave. Joking, they're being funny, where they're at right now with everything, but they're just making light of it. And I got to say, John is just so funny. He's, he had a couple of days in part 1 where he seemed a little bit out of it for whatever reason, but in this segment, he is so funny, John. It's like the old John with that wit. It's just great. So I guess the next day the meeting with George goes well. That's good. And on day 10 is when they're leaving Twickenham. Paul does one last demo of Oh Darling before they leave Twickenham on his own. That's priceless. Beautiful moment. George and Glyn Johns go to Apple to check it out. And I guess Magic Alex, screwed it all up. What a mess. So they got to get all that straightened out. George Martin's going to bring in equipment. So we jump to day 11. There's no filming, but that's kind of a day and then the weekend, they're getting everything ready at Apple in the Apple basement. So on day 12, they gather at Apple for the recording. And here's some of my notes about that day. Very casual. It's fun. They're joking. George is back. They're jamming during the setup while Glyn Johns is getting everything ready. Doing lots of cool covers, like old originals that they never recorded, like Too Bad About Sorrow, stuff like that. Just fun original songs like that. Lots of fragments. You'll notice lots of song fragments. But one thing I noticed in general was they really seem to get it together. That first day 12 at Apple, it's very apparent that they're together. They're in a groove. It's apparent right away. You can just see it. And then Paul reading an article sarcastically, I guess some tabloid guy wrote an article about how the Beatles are in all this disarray. This is one of my favorite parts of day 12 in part 2. Paul's reading sarcastically this article written by some journalist in the British papers, about what the Beatles have been going through. Paul and John are pissed off at this. So it's just, you got to see this. And it's so funny because John's singing in the background like silly as Paul's reading the article, and they're just goofing and having fun with it. And it's one of the funniest moments in episode 2. And then Mal brings in jokingly, a Magic Alex guitar prototype, which looks like this wacky piece of junk, a piece of crap. And it's a really funny segment of them joking about this stupid looking guitar, which you spin the neck around to play a bass. And then it's so funny. You got to see that part. I was laughing my butt off at that. They're joking. They're having fun together. John's on fire. He's being silly at this point. That John Witt is back, and he's just so with it. And another thing I noticed at this point when I was watching is the images again, the visual, so vivid to the point at some of the shots you can see the blood vessels in the Beatles' eyes. That's how, and that's not a bad thing, like they were stoned or high. I mean, like right now, if I got right up on you, you could see the red blood vessels in my eyes. That's how great and detailed this camera work is, or what Peter has done with the restoration. You can see the vessels in the veins in their eyes, whatever. It's just unbelievable. And I also enjoy how it's you got John, Paul, George, and Ringo, but I enjoy how Mal, people like Glyn Johns, Michael Lindsay Hogg, they come interesting characters now in this film. They're characters in the story, in the film, and I like that. We feel like we're getting to know them a little bit. They start talking about getting a fifth player, which eventually is going to be Billy Preston, doing some great workups of their songs. Paul and John working on She Came In Through the Bathroom Window together is priceless. So cool. So January 22nd, day 13 comes. The mood is so positive. It's so upbeat on this day. It's a very productive day, day 13. Song workups are great. The picture and sound just knocks me out. I mean, throughout the whole thing, but especially at this point, it's so good. The way that Giles Martin and Sam O'Kell have mixed this music, it sounds fabulous. And I just noticed on this day, by day 13, that they're relating so well together. They're just, despite everything that's been going on, this is just four buddies, old buddies, grooving, rocking, having a great time. They're in sync. They really are, folks, at this point. And at one point, someone makes a comment of, at Apple, we should put things up on the wall. Like, hey, let's make a montage of all our gold disc on the wall. Which, funny moment. And John jokes, yeah, if you can get Mimi to take them off her wall. Meaning all his are on his Aunt Mimi's wall. And she's not giving them up. It's just a funny moment. Billy arrives just to say hi because he's overseas to do a Lulu TV special. He's going to be on her special. But they talk him into sticking around, and he does. And when Billy starts playing, it's more magic. I mean, they even say at one point, you're giving us a lift, Bill. And John is so engaged. They play Dig a Pony, and it kicks ass. It's so good. They're all into it, but especially to see John, like the old John, engaged and happy, is so thrilling. Day 14, it starts out with more Yoko caterwauling, wailing. You got Paul on drums, John on guitar, Billy Preston's there, and it's called the Freak Out Jam, and that's all I'll say about it. It's like, I don't want to use a bad word for Yoko. I respect Yoko, but anyway, let's move on. Day 14. I like how Paul jokes that Mal's instrument is the anvil. Really funny moment. to me, as I'm getting to this point, I know they're going to break up 10 months later or whatever, but at this point, it doesn't seem like a band that's breaking up. Like I said, it seems like a band, a group of guys that are in sync. They're rocking. They're with it. It does not seem like a band that's about to fall apart. It really doesn't. Switching to Apple you can really feel it in this film. What a boost to them to switch to Apple. Unbelievable. And again, Yoko's there like she always is, but it's like there's a piece of wood sitting next to John. To me, it's not that intrusive. I don't mind her sitting there. She doesn't really affect anything that much other than her presence, but she's not doing anything I can see that would really affect anything. So she's there, but it doesn't hurt the film at all. John joking about the early tours and with Jimmy Nickel and how the way Jimmy would play, and they had to catch up to him. Really funny stuff. You're going to like that. Man. Okay. The Help segment is hilarious. This is not a band that dislikes one another. They're all laughing. There's a little segment with Help and Please Please Me in it on day 14, near the end of day 14. So cool to see them all laughing together like the old days and having a great old time. It's so much fun. And this is the moment when they decide that Get Back's going to be the next single since Hey Jude. Really cool moment. Day 15 comes. Billy's away, still doing his TV rehearsal with Lulu, but they discuss him as a potential fifth Beatle. I thought that was very interesting. Paul pulls out the Rickenbacker bass. I never knew he played it during these sessions, but it's very cool to see it, albeit briefly, but it's there. They do some cool workups of some great songs, Teddy Boy, Maggie May, Fancy My Chances With You. Really cool stuff. Billy comes back in later in the day. They do Dig It with a really cool groove. Patty Harrison stops by. We see her for the first time. Day 16, Saturday. Fun moments for me. India 68 is discussed. Paul has the film, the home movies of it, and he's telling the others all about the film because he's seen it all. And while he's talking about it, they show clips of the Beatles in India. They're joking about it. It's so intimate. It's so just fun to see them having a good time talking about India and the goofiness that went on there. Really, really enjoyed that. They do a segment of the Everlys' Bye Bye Love, which is very cool fragment of it, but it's really nice the way John and Paul sing it together. And I now have a new appreciation for You Blue. I know it's not the greatest Beatles song in the world, but boy, the workup of it on day 16 here on the Saturday, I really have a new appreciation for that song. They really do a nice job with it. And I just see John is on this day like it's like the old John. He's taking more of a leadership role again. You know how he's kind of been in the back burner since Brian died and he met Yoko and everything. But on this day, he seems more like the old John to me. He's got that leadership quality to him, that, come on boys quality. It really made me feel good to see John having that back within him again. I really felt good and positive about that. And you can just tell from the four of them and the way they're interacting and reacting to one another, they realize how well things are going. Things are going well for them, and they like it. You can really tell. And also at the end of this episode, part 2, is when they really come up and the idea of the rooftop concert emerges. And it has some clips of Ringo Paul with Michael Lindsay Hogg and others up on the roof scoping it out, which is very cool stuff. So they're starting to think about this is how they might finish this film. So that's where we get to the point where it ends, folks, before we're ready to go into part 3, which I have not seen yet because it premieres tonight, late tonight. But I got to tell you, folks, it's just, I see this and I just smile that at my age, my elderly years now, I'm getting there, 60, and all the years I've worshipped and loved this band and their music, and to have this gift, this treasure, this laid before us, me, at this point in my life, being such a fan of theirs, I can't express to you how special this is. Like I said in my last video, the anthology blew us away. It blew me away. It was Free as a Bird, Real Love, being back with John on some level. But it's like they're all here again. It's just to see this film and to be sitting there watching this is like they're back. The Beatles are back. And it's just so emotional and so touching to have this gift. I can't express it strong enough to you folks. So that's my thoughts and feelings on part 2, and I look forward to doing this again with you for part 3. Thank you for all of you who hang with me and put up with me during these last 2 episodes. I know in total it's probably over 40 minutes long, but I just want to get my feelings out, folks, because as I said in the first video, this band means the world to me, as I'm sure they do to you. And thank you, Beatles. Thank you for helping me. Thank you for, even at this stage in my life, giving me something that can really, really make me feel good about life, about myself, and hope for the future. Thank you. Love you all. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.